r/AskReddit asks. Serious, what are some creepy urban legends? There is a local lake that when I was growing up, I heard this story that a woman was drowned there by her fiancé. On certain nights she would come up out of the water, and if you happened to be parked near the lake, she would put her hand on your windshield. If she pulled her hand away and it left a handprint, it meant you were going to die too. So kids would slap their hands and drag it across the windshield. And when later on when it got colder and misty, the handprint would show up and freak kids out. The Whistler. Basically, a son killed his father and the grandfather found out, whipped the boys back to a raw state and made him carry his dad's bones in a sack for all eternity. Scary thing is that when he is around you will hear a whistle. Thing is, the louder the whistle, the farther away he is, the closer he is the whistle will sound more faint. It's said he does this to play with you and confuse you before mutilating you and adding your bones to his sack. Said to have killed hundreds of people. That one about the guy who got lost hiking in the woods, so he wandered until he found a log cabin. He knocked the door but nobody answered. The door wasn't locked, so he went in. There was nothing in the cabin but a room with a bed and lots of paintings of monsters and beast faces in the walls. It was very late in the night already, so he fell asleep. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Then when it was morning, he was getting his things ready to go out, and that's when he noticed the scary paintings disappeared, and in its place there were windows. Is the implication that the monsters and beasts were looking at him through the windows and he didn't recognize it? Couple local legends in my hometown. We had witch trials a few years before Salem. 2 women were accused. One was hanged. Apparently her grave was very close to my friend's house, and when she would look out the back door, some nights she'd see a woman with long black hair covering her face looking up at her bedroom. We also have an abandoned Revolutionary War fort where a young man got choked out by an unseen force. All his friends saw it happen. No one really goes up there at night anymore. Heard a story once about a young girl whose boyfriend had asked her if she would like to go for a drink after her late shift. She agreed, but she had to go back to her house first to get changed. Arriving at her home, she noticed her roommate was asleep. She crept into her room to borrow an item of clothing and without waking her managed to creep back out. The following morning she returned home to find her roommate had been violently murdered. On the mirror, however, in lipstick it read, "Bad, you're glad you didn't turn the light on last night." The one in my country that states there was once a foreigner that sang in a karaoke, "My Way" by Frank Sinatra, in the middle of the night but was shot in the head before he could finish it since he stole the mic from a killer that reserved the song, and some claimed that it happened multiple times in a span of a decade in multiple locations. From that day on, patrons of any bar will refrain from choosing "My Way" in a karaoke in the middle of the night in fear that their lives will end before they could finish the song by a mysterious figure brandishing a pistol patrolling every bar. It will end anyone that even dares to sing that song. And amp. Number X200B. Versions of this tale may change, but the idea is the same. That there is a panther living in the Blue Mountains in Australia. Of King Panther. Urban legend. I maintain it's true. Multiple of my family and friends have seen them, and I've even had park rangers warn me they've been spotted. In Pennsylvania there's the 7 Gates of Hell near Helm Township. There was an insane asylum built in the forest away from the general population to keep all the patients away from people. It's believed that the asylum burned down and many patients died during the fire or escaped into the surrounding forest. The name comes from the fact that a gate was built to keep the escaped patients from leaving the area. But when night falls you can follow the path past the first gate and will eventually pass through an additional 6 gates, and after passing through the 7th gate will end up in hell. I live in Florida and there's an old sugar mill from the 1600s near me. At some point the slaves on the plantation started a revolt with the help of the Seminole Indians and secured their freedom by killing many of the landowners. According to several people who were interviewed independently of each other, there is a ghostly Native American on horseback that still chases people off the property at the same time they attacked the colonists 400 years ago. The hands resist him painting, where the subjects of the paintings reportedly move around at night out of their frame. Oh yeah, I remember this one. Even without the story, the painting is super creepy. A woman met a nice man at a party and she went to his place afterwards to hook up. They really clicked, so they set up a date for another time. A day later she had a really bad rash around her mouth, so she went to the doctor. When the doctor saw it, he was shocked. Apparently that type of rash only come from being in contact with dead, decaying bodies. Turns out the man she met is a serial killer and likes to do it with dead women after he kills them, and she was his next victim. I think I've heard a version of this, except I think it was a joke. It wasn't a murderer and she wasn't going to end up a victim, but the guy was a mortician. That one about the babysitter that brings the kids to bed. In the hallway is a statue of a clown that bugs her. When she goes to check on the kids a few hours later, she notices that the statue has a different stance. The babysitter starts to second-guess herself, goes downstairs, and the phone rings. It's the parents asking if everything is okay with the kids. Yep, everything is fine, except for that clown statue. It's creeping me out. The other side of the line goes, we don't have a clown statue. And amp, number X200B, cue unnerving music. In typical depictions, I think, or at least the one I see the most, the room has a lot of clown stuff, but she specifies it's in a rocking chair, and the parents say there isn't one in the rocking chair. That legend where a couple is making out in a well-known spot in the woods. The girl is complaining about being afraid, while the guy is teasing her. Apparently, a man with a hook for a hand escaped from a local prison, and he was known for murdering young couples. Eventually, the girl convinced the guy to leave and take her home. When she gets out of the car, she starts to scream. A hook was stuck on the door handle. Gives me the shivers every time. Man, door, hand, hook, car door. Here in Italy, there is a legend in our high school that a guy killed himself by jumping over the window of his classroom. The fact here is that if you come to school early, I mean very early, you can see his ghost in the window of his classroom. Sorry for the bad English I self-taught. You did a good job. Stranger Things is based on legends from my hometown. It's actually on the east end of Long Island. The Demogorgon, we called that the Mount Oak Beast, the Mount Oak Monster, or just the Beast. We used to break into the old Air Force Base, and there were always rumors that it was never actually shut down and everything was just moved underground. It was called the Mount Oak Project, and it's a pretty well-known one, but most people don't know about the more local parts like the Beast taking kids or why there's higher rates of twins and triplets out there and stuff like that. The Bubuk. Saw it on Snarled, and it's the most terrifying one. Although the Hachishakuasama, hope I spelled it right, is also really freaky. If you like stories like this, the podcast Spirits has a monthly episode featuring urban legends from listeners. The whole podcast is entertaining, but those episodes are my favorites. Not gonna lie, the story of Harold the Scarecrow creeped me out forever. Reading all the scary stories to tell in the dark books in kindergarten was probably a bad idea. That, have you seen this man? Dream thing. I don't like how the picture looks right at you, it's unnerving. Yes. That picture also makes me feel uncomfortable. But oddly enough, it's like I've seen him somewhere before. Black-eyed children, I would have a heart attack. I had a bad trip on mushrooms once. We watched many episodes of that 70s show and everyone's eyes were black. That was not the best time for me.